Okay, so we're recording. I'm going to start all over by reading an opening affirmative prayer by our founder Ernest Holmes. So he said about 100 years ago, "I am free with the freedom of God." We all wish to be free, but at the same time, we should realize that liberty is not license. To say that we are free with the freedom of God does not mean that we are free to do that which contradicts the divine nature. We are free only in that freedom that God is, the freedom to be alive, to enjoy living, to enter into activities of everyday living with enthusiasm and interest. We are free to love and be loved. We are free to give full and complete expression to every capacity we possess, provided this freedom harms no one and hurts no thing. This is freedom enough, because if we were free to do that which is destructive, we should ultimately destroy ourselves. This is a little aside, and some say we're doing that right now with what we're doing to nature, but nevertheless, I digress. And so, in so doing, we would not only deny, but would defame the nature of divinity itself. Therefore, we always pray, "Thy will be done." But within this will, we know there is scope enough for self-expression, plenty of room to move around and express life to its fullest. And here comes the affirmative prayer. I am free with the freedom of God. Today, I manifest this freedom in joy. I think of it with deep gratitude to the giver of all life and with a deep inward sense of my union with the whole. In my own will and imagination, I set myself free, complete and perfect. I feel back to the center of my being, which is God, and affirm that its freedom is my freedom. And I conclude my own physical body, and I include my own physical body in this freedom, as well as every activity in which I am engaged. I expand my consciousness and invite new experiences, knowing that they shall be created for me by the same power that makes everything. I enter into this freedom with complete abandonment, with the feeling that all things are working out well, and with a deep and sincere desire to live so that my freedom shall be imparted to others, that we may all feel that we are in partnership with the infinite. And so it is.
Well said.
So, do you have anything you'd like to say, or shall I continue right now?
Not a word.
Okay. So I have some more wisdom from Ernest Holmes. He says this, and I don't know when this was, but I think it was before 1950. So, but it's more important now than ever. He says, now as never before, we must keep our thinking straight. We must know that the truth constitutes the only guidance and the only power there is, and we must definitely rely on it. So our question is, how are you doing in terms of remembering to focus on truth with a capital T in these times in which we live right now? I know just in speaking with my own personal friends who unfortunately both have been exposed to, but they are not currently living in our teaching. And we can get so easily lost, when we just start listening to people, the media, and we lose track of this knowledge that we are always connected with the divine. And there is that truth that we can depend on, not just facts, not just what's going on in the world. And unfortunately, both of my friends are really suffering with anxiety and depression, which can happen if you don't remember the truth, which is that we are free because we experience the freedom, the God-given freedom that we were given. We were given free will. That is the essence of freedom, free will. And so we have choices to make right here now. I know things are awful out there, but they don't have to be awful in here. We don't have to let what's happening out there be our reality. We have to make wise choices. We were about to fly to California 10 days ago, and we exercised our choice and chose not to go because it didn't seem as safe as it had 3 weeks prior when we made the reservations. So that's freedom. That's freedom to make choices for ourselves. And while someone might say, yeah, but that was made out of fear. Okay, there is a form of self-preservation and preservation of my loved ones involved. But it's still freedom, and we're still well, and my other son is as well as he can be right now, and I think it was a good choice.
Somebody Facebooked me and said that the coronavirus was a fake virus. And I said, so if I die from it, will I be undead?
Will it be a fake death?
Yeah, and they said, yes, I would become part of the undead, which is
great.
the undead. That's right. So anyway, that wasn't so appealing. I was thinking about what you were saying about the how we're connected to a higher or greater intelligence, and how we're connected to something bigger than we are, and how that's changed over time. So when we talk about truth, the truth is that we're connected to a divine consciousness. We're connected to something greater than we are, so much greater than we are, and we're all connected. Okay, if we go way, way back, that idea was present as an idea of a God that required sacrifices. He lived in the sky, and I don't know why he required virgins, but typically he did. And you had to sacrifice a virgin or two every now and then in order to get rain or in order to get decent conditions. And I thought, wow, the evolution of God in human understanding has changed. The idea that there is a God hasn't. But what I think is also true is a lot of the rudiments of that original thinking, that God required sacrifice, that God was judgmental, that God was sitting there watching and keeping score, that notion has continued in an unconscious kind of way for many people over a long period of time. So when we talk about the truth is that we're connected to a divine consciousness, a divine intelligence, it's important to say, and it's in favor of us. It favors us in that it equipped us with everything that we needed to be able to survive all kinds of conditions and all kinds of circumstances. In fact, everything that has been created was created with the technology to survive.
Yes.
Including viruses, unfortunately.
Yeah, right.
And so what I think we overlook is that this consciousness that we're talking about that is in favor of us is active and alive and excited and enthusiastic about us being able to not only persevere and to survive, but to thrive. And so when we talk about freedom, we need to talk about freedom in relationship to our knowing that we are here on purpose to do something, and the universe is in favor of us doing that and has given us the tools to do that. So we're not doomed to fail. We don't have, it doesn't all have to be an uphill battle. And an awful lot of people that I know that I'm talking to are thinking that everything we're going through is an uphill battle.
And we have free will. So people have free will to throw caution to the wind and say, I'm not wearing a mask and I'm not going to stop socializing. And they will experience the consequences of their actions. And we're seeing that now. It shows up, unfortunately, about a month later when you have the death statistics, or the hospitals are full, as is happening in Arizona and Texas, and in Florida, So we have free will. We have that freedom. And we have the freedom to be wise, because I do believe God is for us, but God is for us as a species. And then it's up to you. And we are free to destroy ourselves, literally, and our planet with our choices.
Sure.
With the laws that we see made or unmade to protect our planet.
Yeah, today I'm wearing a shirt to, some of you can't see it. It's a Broward Health shirt. And I'm wearing it in recognition of the healthcare workers at the hospitals all over who have the freedom to say no, who have the freedom to say I'm staying home, who have the freedom to do things other than care for people that are sick, who are saying, yes, I choose this, and I'm willing to do this. And I wanted to say special thanks to all the healthcare people, all the healthcare providers, all the people out there that are doing at all levels. I mean, because I've worked in hospitals most of my life, I think we don't recognize all the people that it does take in the healthcare industry. It takes a village to make it work, to have us be able to have a place where we can go if we're sick and get help. And so, anyway, I just wanted to say thank you to
Acknowledge them,
to all of them.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to talk about healing the sick, but from a metaphysical point of view, from our point of view of using the power of spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer to heal others. And again, Ernest Holmes says, we do not deny that people are sick. If they weren't sick, what would we be trying to heal them for? So we know that people get sick, and we know we ourselves get sick sometimes. Many of us has found that in this teaching, great relief that we're no longer helpless in our care of ourselves or others. Ernest again says, we merely affirm that if we introduce the right idea of life, it lifts the consciousness into a transcendent position to the disease and actually removes the disease by introducing a higher law. Now, I've seen that happen with myself, with my own family. I know many of you watching agree with that and have also. So we don't stop what we call knowing the truth. And knowing the truth is that we are perfect, whole, and complete right here and right now. And we trust God and we tie our camel, as the saying goes. You know, I heard one minister say, because they said, well, if you trust God, why are you wearing a mask? And he said, well, I trust God and I still wear a seatbelt when I get in the car too. You know? So it's not an either or. It's a both. It's a both. And we continually know the truth about ourselves. And I don't know about you, but I'm human and I get frightened sometimes for my family. And so I have a little fear and then I do treatment, you know, and I remind myself of knowing the truth because I don't want to stay in that mode of worrying. I can't help it. I go there sometimes, but I pull myself out by reminding myself of the truth because then I feel better and I don't go around
and we're blessed we can pull each other out of it because we both go through it, hopefully not at the same time, you know, thinking that it's not, nothing's going to work. It's just an awful time, and it isn't an awful time. Viktor Frankl, who was a neurologist and a psychiatrist that we actually had the occasion to meet years and years ago at a presentation. He is a psychiatrist who went into a concentration camp and everything obviously was taken from him. The book that he just finished writing that he was getting ready to have published was sewn into his jacket, which was taken from him. So he lost everything. And now he's in a concentration camp.
His book was called?
Man in Search of Meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning. And so he had nothing. He lost everything. But he didn't lose his freedom to choose how he was going to be in the concentration camp. And for those of us who think from time to time that we're in a concentration camp, except that maybe we're paying a mortgage payment for it, but if we think we're in a camp, if we think we're locked away somehow, he was locked away in a concentration camp too. And he did some things that we can do that were valuable. Every morning, no matter how cold it was, no matter how bad it was, he got up before everyone else got up and he went outside and he watched the sunset, the sunrise. And he said, I watched the sunrise on the other side of the fence because that's where I am and I'm free.
And nobody can take that away from him.
Nobody, right. And nobody could take it away from him. But there's something else that he talked about, which I want to bring up now because you brought up healing, which is really, really important. Nearly everyone in the concentration camp was eventually murdered, but there were those who weren't. Now, when you go to a place where you're going to get murdered and you know that, and you also are being starved and you know that, and it's also cold and you know that, and everybody is sick and you know how sick they are, would that be a place where when you were given food, you'd give some of it away to somebody who was in more pain than you? I mean, think about what that's like to give away some of your food when everyone is dying to someone who seems to be closer to death than you are. Amongst the people that did that, interestingly enough, they didn't get as sick and they often didn't die where the people that they gave the food to did. This is really, really important because...
Or the people who wouldn't share any of their food.
Yes. So
they live longer than they.
Right. The ones, he noticed two things. The ones who slept more died sooner, and the ones who didn't have anything to give died sooner than the ones who gave whatever they had. And so what I want to say is that we have the freedom to give, and the freedom to give is healing. When we give, we actually heal because we're affirming that we're abundant. we're affirming that there's enough to go around, enough to spare, enough to share. And that affirmation is what the body listens to. Remember, the body is listening to everything you say and think. And so when you say, "Oh my God, there's not enough. This is terrible. Oh my God, I'll be dead in a week," the body says, "Oh, we better prepare for that. We go to bed now and start sleeping. So, prepare for death." When you say, "Everyone around me is dying, but not me, there's a lot of work here I have to do, and I can do that," the body reacts differently because the body has an intention to survive, and that changes the immune system, and that changes everything. So what I'm saying is that your attitude about the condition that you're in is something you have freedom to choose. And when you choose to say, I'm about to thrive, I am thriving, my life is actually working for me, your body and the body of your experience favors that, supports that, encourages that, and will help you have more of that.
Yeah, you have to be careful what you say because your body's listening.
Yeah.
And it follows suit. So Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist, a Jewish psychiatrist, and his wife was killed in the concentration camp. And he saw his people being murdered, So here is a highly educated, successful man, just written a book. He's trying to grapple with this idea of man's inhumanity with man. So that he's grappling with how can we find meaning in a life that seems meaningless. And then he ends up in the concentration camp. But one of the things he says is when we're no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And that's what he did. He changed his own thinking and he survived it. His wife did not. He didn't know that at the time. They were sent separate places, but he lost everything. He also said, being a psychiatrist, he said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our, can't read it, Bob.
Power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Yeah, in our response lies our growth and our freedom. That's huge. In our response to everything is our chance to grow and to thrive. When you hear people talk, people that have started a business, and the first thing that happens when you go to start a business is people say, "Wow, that's exciting," and don't you know it won't work? Why won't it work? Well, you see, 70% or 80% of all businesses don't work. You don't have enough money.
They fail in the first 3 years.
Yeah, everybody that's tried it, and interestingly is, go for it, but just know that it's not going to work. And the people that have been the most successful have approached it a little differently. What they've said is, not only will it work, but the things that I'm seeing that tell me that it won't work are the problems to be overcome first so that it will work. What if we looked at every problem that's occurring as what we need to know in order to move forward rather than evidence of future failure?
And so on one of those things that's been brought to our attention by the news, sometimes there's good news that you can find, and it is that although it's always predicted, death is what's predicted for people who get coronavirus over the age of 60, 65. There was a news article about a woman of 102 who lived in a nursing home who was told that she was positive for COVID. And the staff was also sad because they loved her. And she said, "Well, they told me I was sick, but I didn't feel sick." And she recovered without ever feeling sick. She's also a person who survived the Spanish flu. She was 1 year old when the Spanish flu was there, and she and her mother survived, although
she didn't even speak Spanish.
The doctor told the husband, her father, to prepare for their deaths because it was inevitable. And so she survived both, and this last one, she didn't even feel sick. So I realized there's a possibility it was a false positive. Our testing is not 100% accurate, but it's pretty remarkable. It's pretty remarkable because she also survived cancer in 2 areas. I remember she had cancer in 2 different places and survived that, decades ago. So we always need to keep our eye on the fact that even if you get sick or catch the virus, that it doesn't mean anything except how you think it will mean and what it means to you. So don't ever forget the power of that, because there's only one mind, and that's the mind of God. So how often do we remember that we live and move and have our being in that one mind? And we can use it according to the law of mind, according to the law of cause and effect.
So we live
and move
and
have
our being in that one mind. This is an important piece. If you right now were to take a second and pull back and close your eyes and say to yourself, I have my life right now in that one being. I'm living my life in that one being. That changes everything.
Yes, it does.
First off, I'm not alone. And secondly, I'm part of the adventure rather than part of some horrible thing happening. And so I think we need to slow down with even what we read and ask ourselves, what does this mean to me now? And what if it were true, really true, and I really accepted it? How would that change me? How would I behave? I think what I see often on Facebook, because I spend way too much time on it, and I love it, is an awful lot of people that just go, they that's a good one, that's a good one, that's a good one, that's a good one. And all of the affirmative things that are being posted on my face page anyway, they're all wonderful. But what you need to do or could do is to stop and say, is that really true? If that's really true, if there really is a power for good in the universe and it's working through me, what does that mean to me right now? It means I'm not alone. It means that I can afford to live because I'm living in the divine intention of a source that has its best interest in me. It has a vested interest in me that wants me to succeed.
Exactly.
Wow. You know, it's kind of like going to the bank and saying, I need a loan to get this business started. And the bank says, unlimited resources, however much you need, it's yours.
That's right.
And you go home and you don't spend all of that money, but you now know you're going to think differently and act differently because you just got told by the bank that the money that you need, no matter how much of it's available. Well, what if what we need from the source is just as unlimited? And we could imagine, I went to the divine consciousness, I went to the divine mind in the universe, and I said, I have a lot of need. I'm going to do a lot of things, and I need a lot. And that divine mind said, oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. And when you get tired of that, we have even more for you. What I'd like for us to do this week is to think about the divine source continuously giving to us without holdback, without reservation, and that it's up to us to decide how much of that we want to tap into rather than having to wonder whether it's even true or not.
And you were going to speak about that liberty is not license. You know,
Yeah.
Liberty does not mean that you have license to
I remember
harm others, for example.
I remember as a father, I gave my son a toy, and I said, now this toy is a toy that you can play with, but you can't throw it, you can't hit other people with it, you can't do any number of things with it other than play with it. So it's your toy. You have the freedom to enjoy it, but you don't have the freedom to do things with it that are going to hurt other people. And so he played with it, and then he also decided it would also be nice to throw it at somebody that he wasn't agreeing with, and he threw it at somebody he wasn't agreeing with, and I quickly got it, and I said, it's not your toy anymore, at least not for today. He said, it's my toy. You can't take my things away from me. And I said, actually, I can, and I have to, because what's more important than this being your toy is how you use it and what you do with it. And in essence, what I was telling him that I'm hearing now is I have the freedom, if I want to do whatever I want, and nobody can take that away from me. You actually don't have that freedom to do anything that you want, because if some of the things you want to do will harm other people, that's not a freedom that you have. And we often do things that harm other people that we don't even know are going to harm them when we do them. But when we find out that they are harmful, we need to stop. And so we have freedom, the freedom of choice, and we can choose again, but we do not have the freedom, this sort of license to do whatever we feel like. And obviously I have a bias, and because I work a lot in hospitals and I've worked in healthcare most of my life, my bias would be that people that would be out there right now that are trying to protect and help other people not get sick would wear a mask. And I'm also hearing I have the freedom to choose not to. And I would assert you don't actually have that freedom. That's not a freedom that was given to you. It's just not one of the freedoms. You cannot wear a mask, but it's not a freedom. And we're acting as if right now, all we have to do is to say, it's a freedom I have, and all of a sudden everyone should step back and the water should part, and oh my goodness, it's a freedom. I didn't realize that. It's not a freedom. So we really have to be careful what we say yes to, what we say no to, and be thoughtful of that, because freedom is a double-edged sword. And it's something we have to be really careful with.
Right, that's liberty with license.
Yeah.
That means from an egotistical point of view, I can do whatever I want without regard to others. And so the movement in our country that's saying I've got a God-given right to breathe the air I want to breathe without a mask is imposing a right for oneself that can harm others. So
I was talking to God just yesterday, and I said, "Why does your voice sound muffled?" He says, "I'm wearing a mask." Maybe not. Okay.
So we also want to look at do we limit the use of the one mind, that we have use of it to the extent that we use it. But if we don't know we can use it, we don't use it. And a lot of us who know we can use it forget, and enter into powerlessness again. But it's important to know that there is as much of it available as we use, as we choose to use. And we choose to use it by saying truth statements, by declaring the truth of our being, the truths that we're talking about, that we're one with the power of God. And that we can be in a prison camp, if you will, of not being able to go where we want to go and be with the people we want to be with. We can be in that camp and still be free and still be content by knowing that we're not alone, we're not helpless. This too shall pass. And most of our people that I talk to are doing far better than people I know who don't have this teaching, who don't have this belief, because they're not falling into this helpless victim attitude, which is so harmful. It just controls everything that you say to yourself.
We have to be willing to recognize there's a power in the universe that's greater than we are, that we can use, but we may have to learn how to use it, not just know that it's there. Judith gave me the other day a jar, and she said, "I can't open this." And she couldn't open it. So I then attempted to open it. And what I tried to do was to open it up using the least amount of intelligence and the least amount of action that I needed. So hold it in one hand, turn the jar lid with the other hand, and it wouldn't turn. What happened is my hand began to slip a little bit. And I too thought, I can't open this. And then I got a rubber band, and I put a rubber band around the top of the jar lid, and I turned it, and it opened. Sometimes we need more tools. We need to do something other than to say I can or I can't. We need to go the next step and ask, what is there in my world that I can tap into, or that I can connect with, that will allow me to do this? We can't do all of this alone, but we're actually not alone. We can't do all the things we want to see happen by ourselves, but that's why we're not all by ourselves. Opening a jar required everything I had and all the strength I had, plus a rubber band. Which is kind of interesting. I think it's humbling to think how well equipped we have, and yet we're just one rubber band short of the thing we need to have, and sometimes to open up life the way we'd like to open it up. And we need to be humble enough to realize, wow, isn't it interesting? The power of a rubber band in my mind finally got that jar open and it seemed impossible. I had banged on the jar, I had tapped on the jar, I set it aside, I meditated on it. I did all the things that we would do with a jar to get it open. Tried running hot water over it. None of those things happened. So what we can conclude very quickly is it can't happen, or we can say maybe I need more resources.
Yeah, so again, in conclusion, I'd like to say we live in the land of the free, but that freedom doesn't give us license to just throw caution to the wind and be harmful to others. But we do need to exercise our freedom to use the law of mind, the law of cause and effect that we know that we do all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. So let's do it consciously for our good and the good of others. I see our country recovering from all this. I see our people recovering from all this. And that's what we need to keep in our minds at all time. Before we close with a closing prayer, I'd like to remind you that we continue to exist through your generous donations. And so we invite you, if you can, if you choose, to go to our website, which is CSL, which stands for Center for Spiritual Living, cslpalmbeaches.org. There's a donate button there, and we welcome any donations that you can do to support us in this time, because we cannot meet yet physically, and we look forward to when we can do that.
But we are here today because you are here supporting us, and we can't do this without you. There are expenses that go with keeping the center alive and healthy and having it thrive. So please don't think that this is just something we do because it's fun to do. It is fun to do. It's exciting to do.
It's and it's good for us to do.
Yeah, but it's also something that requires energy from you too at every level. So looking at your faces and seeing you there is huge. Looking at PayPal and saying, "Oh my God, another donation," that's huge. So please do what you can. And why don't you close with a prayer?
Closing prayer. So we come together giving thanks for our freedom. We know that we were given this gift of freedom with the origin of creation of man, the freedom of choice. And we choose to exercise it with wisdom. We choose to exercise it for the highest good, for ourselves, our families, our loved ones, and our nation. We know that we are moving toward a higher good, that we are evolving to be more consciously aware of our union with God, and we choose to use our liberty with love and protection and joy for all of our fellow human beings. Knowing this to be true, we release, and together we say, and so it is.
And I want to add a PS prayer. And my PS prayer is, I want to say a special thank you, a great amount of gratitude for all of the pets out there that keep us company, that look us in the eye, that rub up against us, that smile the way they smile and say, "I love you," during some challenging and difficult times. For each of you out there, I say thank you, I bless you, and I know for you, the very best is still to come. And so it is.
So it is. So we're
going to sign off now, or I'm signing off on Facebook, and we're going to continue on Zoom.